The day my father called me worthless changed everything. I remember standing in his mahogany-paneled office, the same office where he'd built Morrison Industries from nothing into a Fortune 500 company. The same office where, moments before, he crushed my dreams with a few cruel words. "Nathan, you're worthless to this company and this family," he declared, his voice as cold as the marble floors beneath my feet. "I've wasted years grooming you to take over, but you're nothing but a disappointment." I stood there, my proposal for modernizing our manufacturing division clutched in trembling hands. At 26, I'd spent the last 4 years working my way up through every department, learning the business from the ground up. Unlike my younger brother Marcus, who'd walked straight into an executive position after business school. "Dad, if you just look at the numbers," I started. But he cut me off with a dismissive wave. "The numbers? You want to talk about numbers?" He pulled up the company's latest quarterly report on his screen. "Your department's productivity is down 15%. Your innovative ideas," he sneered at the word, "have cost us millions. Meanwhile, your brother's division is up 30% this quarter alone." Because Marcus is running everything into the ground for short-term gains, I protested. "We need sustainable." "Enough?" His fist slammed against the desk, making his CEO of the Year award rattle. "I'm done watching you destroy what I've built. You're fired. Clear out your office by the end of the day." My mouth went dry. "You're firing me? Your own son?" He leaned back in his leather chair, his expression distant. "As of this moment, I have only one son. Marcus will take over as planned. You're no longer welcome here or at home." The words hit like physical blows. Not just fired, but disowned. 15 years of dedication, of trying to prove myself worthy of the Morrison name, erased in an instant. "You'll regret this," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. He actually laughed, a short, harsh sound that echoed off the office walls. "The only thing I regret is wasting so much time believing you could amount to anything. Now get out." I walked out of that office with nothing but my proposal, my laptop, and a determination burning in my chest. My father had just made the biggest mistake of his life, but he wouldn't realize it for years to come. That night, I checked into a modest hotel with a few $1,000s in my personal account. While my father probably expected me to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, I had other plans. I opened my laptop and began composing emails to the network of contacts I'd built over the years, suppliers, distributors, rival executives who tried to poach me before. By midnight, I had 3 meetings scheduled for the next day. By dawn, I'd outlined the framework for what would become Phoenix Capital Partners, though I made sure my name appeared nowhere in the official documentation. Instead, a maze of shell companies and trusted proxies would hide my identity as founder and CEO. I knew my father's company inside and out, its strengths, its weaknesses, and most importantly, its vulnerabilities. Marcus might have the title, but he lacked the deep understanding of the business that came from working every position. His successful division was built on cutting corners and deferring maintenance, a strategy that would come back to haunt Morrison Industries in the years ahead. The first year was brutal. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, working 18-hour days to build my company from scratch. Every penny of profit went back into the business. While my family assumed I'd vanish into obscurity, I was meticulously laying the groundwork for my return. Phoenix Capital Partners specialized in turning around struggling manufacturing companies, the same kind of companies Morrison Industries had been steadily pushing toward bankruptcy with their aggressive cost-cutting. We'd buy them at rock-bottom prices, modernize their operations using the same sustainable practices my father had rejected, and turn them into highly profitable enterprises. By year 3, we were managing over $100 million in assets. By year 5, that number had grown to $500 million. I assembled a team of the industry's brightest minds, people who shared my vision for long-term sustainability over short-term profits. We operated in the shadows, our success known only to those who needed to know. I never touched Morrison Industries directly, not yet. Instead, I watched from afar as Marcus's leadership style began showing its cracks. Deferred maintenance led to costly breakdowns. High-pressure sales tactics alienated long-term customers. The stock price remained artificially high through aggressive buybacks, but the foundation was crumbling. My father, now semi-retired and serving as chairman of the board, either didn't see the problems or chose to ignore them. His golden child could do no wrong, even as the company's debt mounted and its market share eroded. I kept tabs on them through industry channels. My mother had apparently taken to drink to cope with my abandonment of the family. Marcus had married some socialite and moved into a mansion that cost more than our annual R&D budget. And my father, he still gave interviews talking about his son carrying on his legacy as if I'd never existed. None of them knew that the quiet, steadily growing force in the manufacturing sector, the company buying up their competitors and transforming them into powerhouses, was run by the son they'd thrown away. None of them suspected that every success of Phoenix Capital Partners was another step in my carefully orchestrated plan. Then came the day I'd been waiting for. 10 years after being thrown out of my father's office, I sat in my own corner office in a downtown high-rise, reviewing the latest report on Morrison Industries. The company was in trouble, serious trouble. Years of Marcus's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They needed a major capital injection within the next quarter or they faced bankruptcy. I picked up my phone and called my CFO. Sarah, remember that contingency plan we discussed for Morrison Industries? It's time. Set up the meeting. 3 days later, my father and brother sat in our conference room, not knowing they were about to face the son they'd discarded. They thought they were meeting with PG Phoenix, the mysterious CEO of their last hope for salvation. I straightened my tie and checked my reflection in the window. 10 years had changed me. I was leaner, harder, my face weathered by a decade of relentless work. I doubted they'd recognize me immediately. I smiled slightly, thinking of all the times my father had called me worthless. He was about to learn just how wrong he'd been. The moment I stepped into that conference room, time seemed to slow. My father sat at the far end, his once dark hair now completely gray, deep lines etched around his mouth. Marcus slouched beside him, his expensive suit unable to hide the soft paunch he developed. Neither looked up immediately, too busy shuffling through their desperate financial projections. Sarah, my CFO, sat quietly in the corner, barely containing her smile. She was one of the few who knew the full story, and she'd been looking forward to this moment almost as much as I had. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I'm PG Phoenix." My father's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. For a moment, he just stared, his face draining of color as recognition slowly dawned. Marcus took longer. He'd always been slower on the uptake. "Nathan," my father whispered, his voice hoarse. "What? What are you doing here?" I moved to the head of the table, setting down my laptop with deliberate calm. "I'm here to discuss the future of Morrison Industries, though I suppose I should properly introduce myself. I'm the CEO of Phoenix Capital Partners, the company you're desperately hoping will save your failing enterprise." Marcus finally caught up, his face flushing red. "This is ridiculous. Father, we can't possibly deal with him. After he abandoned the family." "Abandoned?" I cut him off with a cold laugh. "Is that the story you've been telling? That I abandoned the family? Not that I was fired and disowned for daring to suggest sustainable business practices over short-term profits." My father's shock was transforming into anger. If this is some kind of revenge. Revenge? I opened my laptop, pulling up Morrison Industries' financial statements. "No, this is business. Your company is 3 months away from bankruptcy. Your stock has lost 60% of its value in the past year. Your major creditors are calling in their loans. You need an immediate capital injection of at least $300 million just to keep the lights on." I paused, letting that sink in. "Fortunately for you, I'm prepared to make an offer." "We don't need your help," Marcus snarled, but our father silenced him with a sharp gesture. "What's your offer?" he asked, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. I smiled, remembering all the times he dismissed my ideas. "Phoenix Capital Partners will purchase a controlling interest in Morrison Industries for $500 million. This will clear your immediate debt and provide working capital for necessary modernization. In return, we'll assume full operational control." "You want to take over my company?" My father's face reddened. "The company I built from nothing." "The company you're running into the ground," I corrected him. "Your choice is simple. Accept our offer or declare bankruptcy within the quarter. And before you start looking for other options, you should know that we've acquired controlling interests in most of your major suppliers over the past 5 years. No other investor will touch Morrison Industries without our blessing." Marcus jumped to his feet. This is extortion. We'll sue. Sit down, Marcus, our father snapped. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something new in his eyes. Respect mixed with fear. You planned this. All of it. For how long? Since the day you called me worthless, I replied calmly. I spent 10 years building an empire larger than anything you could imagine, all while you were praising Marcus for destroying everything you built. Phoenix Capital Partners currently manages over $900 million in assets. We own controlling interests in 27 manufacturing companies across 3 continents, and now we're offering to save Morrison Industries, though perhaps not in the way you'd prefer. My father slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. And if we refuse? Then Morrison Industries declares bankruptcy and Phoenix Capital Partners purchases your assets at auction for pennies on the dollar. Either way, the company will be mine. The only question is whether you walk away with something or nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked like he might be sick. My father stared at the financial statements on the table, his hands trembling slightly. The board will never approve this, Marcus tried one last time. Sarah spoke up for the first time. The board approved the deal last night. They've been aware of the company's true financial situation for months. They're quite eager to accept Phoenix Capital's offer. My father's head snapped up. Last night, but we just. You just scheduled this meeting, yes, I smiled. But we've been preparing for this moment for a very long time. The paperwork is already drawn up. All we need are your signatures. I nodded to Sarah, who produced a thick folder of documents. She placed them in front of my father, along with an elegant fountain pen, the same brand he'd given Marcus when he made him CEO. My father stared at the papers for a long moment. All these years, he said quietly, I thought you were nothing, that you'd never amount to anything. I couldn't have been more wrong. Sign the papers, Dad, I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. Let me show you what Morrison Industries can become when it's run properly. Slowly, his hand shaking slightly, he picked up the pen. One by one, he signed each marked page, effectively transferring control of his life's work to the son he'd once declared worthless. Marcus stormed out before the signing was complete, but I barely noticed. My eyes were fixed on my father's face as he signed the final page. It's done, he said, setting down the pen. The company is yours. I gathered the signed documents, handing them to Sarah for processing. I'll expect your resignation letter on my desk by tomorrow morning. Marcus's too, though I suspect he's already halfway to his lawyer's office. My father stood, straightening his shoulders with what dignity he had left. And what happens now? Now? I smiled. Now I'm going to turn Morrison Industries into what it always should have been. A company that values sustainable growth over quick profits, innovation over tradition, and merit over bloodline. He nodded slowly. I understand. And what about family? Is there any way to? I cut him off gently. The time for family was 10 years ago. Right now, we're just 2 businessmen concluding a transaction. Maybe someday that will change, but that's not why I'm here. He walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. You're not worthless. You're everything I should have wanted in a son. I know, I replied simply. Goodbye, Dad. After you left, I stood at the window of my office, looking out over the city. 10 years ago, I'd walked out of my father's office with nothing but a laptop and a dream. Now I own that office, that company, and so much more. Sarah appeared at my side. Congratulations, boss. Was it everything you hoped it would be? I thought about my father's face when he realized who I was, about Marcus's impotent rage, about the years of work that had led to this moment. No, I said finally. It was better. The next morning, I walked into Morrison Industries as its new CEO. The same security guard who'd escorted me out a decade ago nodded respectfully as I passed. The same elevator carried me to the top floor, but this time I wasn't a disappointment seeking approval. I was the most powerful person in the building. I stepped into my father's old office, my office now, and smiled. The CEO of the Year award still sat on the desk, gathering dust. I picked it up, studying my father's name engraved on the base, then dropped it into the trash. Time to build something new. 5 years later, Morrison Industries had transformed into everything I'd once dreamed it could be. Our sustainable manufacturing practices set industry standards. Our employee satisfaction rates were the highest in the sector. Our stock price had tripled. My father occasionally sent emails, trying to rebuild some kind of relationship. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. Marcus had moved to Florida, where he ran a struggling consulting business. Neither of them had any power over me anymore. I kept the newspaper article that covered my takeover of Morrison Industries framed on my office wall. The headline read, "Phoenix Rises. Unknown Investor Saves Manufacturing Giant." Below it, I added a small note in my own handwriting. Not worthless anymore. Success, I'd learned, wasn't about proving your worth to others. It was about believing in yourself even when no one else did. My father had tried to break me, but instead, he'd forced me to become something far greater than he could have imagined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about building something so magnificent that they have to live with the knowledge that they were wrong about you all along. I turned back to my work, smiling slightly. After all, I had an empire to run.
The day I opened Sweet Success Bakery, my family treated it like a joke. I still remember standing in my newly renovated shop, surrounded by the gleaming display cases and the warm scent of fresh bread, while they picked everything apart. "Oh honey," my mother sighed, running a manicured finger along the counter. "A bakery? After graduating from Cornell's hospitality program? What a waste." My father didn't even try to hide his disappointment. "Isabel, we spent a fortune on your education so you could run prestigious restaurants, not sell cupcakes to housewives." The worst was my brother Anthony, fresh from his latest triumph as executive chef at our family's crown jewel, the Golden Vine, Boston's most acclaimed fine dining establishment. "Really, Izzy?" He smirked, picking up one of my artisanal croissants and dropping it like it might contaminate him. "This is what you're settling for? Making birthday cakes and cookie platters?" I straightened my apron, crisp white with my bakery's logo embroidered in gold, and met his gaze. "Not everyone needs foamed truffle essence to make good food, Anthony." He laughed, that condescending chuckle that always made me feel small. "No, some people just lack the ambition to do better. Enjoy your little hobby." What they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to ask, was that Sweet Success was just the visible part of my plan. While they'd assumed I was finding myself after graduation, I'd actually been building something much bigger. The truth was, I'd spent the last 3 years working behind the scenes, using my inheritance from Grandma Rose to quietly acquire struggling restaurants across the city. Each one was carefully chosen, thoroughly researched, and turned around using methods I'd developed during my wasted education. My company, Rose Hospitality Group, named in honor of my grandmother, now owned 15 restaurants, 3 catering companies, and was about to close deals on 2 more venues. But as far as my family knew, I was just the owner of a cute little bakery in the wrong part of town. "The location is certainly interesting," my mother commented, peering through the front windows at the developing neighborhood, "though I suppose it's all you could afford." What she didn't know was that I owned the entire building, plus 3 others on the block. The area was on the cusp of becoming the city's hottest new dining district, something I'd discovered through careful market research while my family was busy chasing Michelin stars. "Maybe we could help you get a job at the Golden Vine," my father offered, trying to sound generous. "Something entry-level, of course, but it would be a step up from this." I thought about the reports sitting in my office upstairs, the ones showing the Golden Vine's steadily declining revenues. My family's pride and joy was bleeding money, though they were too arrogant to see it. "Thanks, Dad, but I'm happy here," I said, sliding a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies into the display case. They were made from Grandma Rose's recipe, the same one she'd used to build her own successful bakery before my father convinced her to sell it and invest in real restaurants. "Happiness doesn't pay the bills," Anthony snipped. "But I suppose you'll learn that soon enough. Most small businesses fail within the first year, you know." I did know. I also knew why they failed, which was exactly why Rose Hospitality Group had a 98% success rate with its acquisitions. But Anthony was too busy adding gold leaf to overpriced risotto to understand real business strategy. "We should go," my mother announced, checking her designer watch. "We have reservations at the Golden Vine. Anthony's launching his new tasting menu tonight. 14 courses of molecular gastronomy. Now that's real cooking." I watched them leave, their expressions a mixture of pity and disappointment. Through the window, I saw them climb into my father's Mercedes, probably already forgetting about their failure of a daughter and her doomed little bakery. What they didn't see was James Chin, my CFO, slipping in through the back door moments later. "The final reports are in," he said, setting his laptop on the counter. "The Golden Vines numbers are worse than we thought. They're 3 months behind on their lease, suppliers are demanding payment upfront, and their staff turnover rate is approaching 80%. I wiped flour from my hands and opened the spreadsheet. "And the property? The building owner is ready to sell. He's tired of late payments and Anthony's attitude. We can get it for 30% below market value if we move fast." I smiled, thinking of my brother's face when he realized his precious kitchen would soon belong to his failing sister. "Do it. But through one of our shell companies. I don't want them to know it's us." "Not yet." James nodded, already typing. "What about the other issues? The health code violations they've been hiding, the wage theft complaints from former staff. Document everything but don't report it yet. When the time comes, we'll use it to negotiate." I started preparing dough for tomorrow's breakfast service. How long until they're forced to seek investors? At their current burn rate? 2 months, maybe 3. Their new molecular gastronomy program is bleeding them dry. The equipment alone cost more than their monthly revenue. I thought about Anthony's elaborate creations, dishes that looked like art but often left diners still hungry, plated with expensive tools he barely knew how to use properly. He'd always chosen flash over substance. "Keep monitoring the situation," I said, "and make sure our other acquisitions stay under the radar. I don't want anyone connecting Rose Hospitality Group to Sweet Success until the moment is right." James packed up his laptop, then hesitated. "Isabel, are you sure about this? Buying your family's restaurant, letting them struggle until they have to come to you for help. It's ruthless." I looked around my bakery at the cases filled with carefully crafted pastries, each one made with skill and love rather than pretension. At the comfortable seating area where customers could actually relax instead of perching uncomfortably on designer chairs. At the walls painted in warm colors instead of stark, fashionable white. "They're the ones who chose to be ruthless," I said quietly. "When they mocked my dreams, dismissed my choices, and tried to shame me into following their path. Now they'll learn what happens when you underestimate someone who actually understands both food and business." The bell above the door chimed as my first afternoon customers arrived. A young mother with 2 children, their eyes lighting up at the display of cookies and cakes. "Welcome to Sweet Success," I greeted them warmly, already reaching for the cookie samples I kept ready for young visitors. This was real hospitality, not the cold, Instagram-worthy experience my family thought represented success. As I helped the children choose their treats, I thought about the Golden Vines' empty tables and mounting debts. About my brother's overpriced menu that locals couldn't afford and tourists visited once but never returned to. About my parents' stubborn pride that would soon come crashing down. They thought I was small, pursuing a humble dream while they chased prestige. They were about to learn that true success isn't measured in Michelin stars or molecular foam, but in understanding what people really want and need. And sometimes, it comes wrapped in the simple perfection of a chocolate chip cookie, served by the person they least expected to succeed. The collapse of the Golden Vine happened faster than even I predicted. Anthony's molecular gastronomy experiment was a disaster. Local food critics called it pretentious, inedible, and a masterclass in style over substance. My brother's response was to buy more expensive equipment and raise prices even higher. 2 months after my family's visit to my pathetic little bakery, James brought me the news I'd been waiting for. "They're desperate," he reported, setting a thick folder on my office desk. "The bank is threatening to call their loans, suppliers are demanding cash on delivery, and they just lost their last major investor." I looked up from the wedding cake design I was sketching. "And the property?" "We closed the deal yesterday. Rose Hospitality Group now owns the building through 3 layers of shell companies. They don't suspect a thing." I smiled, thinking of the lease violation notices our property management company would soon be sending. Perfect timing. "How's Sweet Success doing?" James grinned, pulling up our latest numbers. "Revenue is up 40% this quarter. The cooking classes are booked solid for the next 6 months, and that feature in Food and Wine about artisanal bakeries revitalizing urban neighborhoods brought in a flood of new customers. And our other properties? all showing healthy profits. The new farm-to-table concept in the old warehouse space is already turning tables away. The casual Italian place we bought last month just got a 4-star review. Even that struggling diner we took over is now breaking even. I nodded, satisfied. While my family had been chasing trends and stars, I'd been building a restaurant group focused on quality, sustainability, and actual hospitality. No foam, no gold leaf, just good food served with genuine care. The call came 3 days later. Isabel. My father's voice sounded strained. Are you busy? We need to talk. I looked around my bustling bakery, where customers lined up for fresh bread and pastries while others sat enjoying coffee and treats at the comfortable tables. I'm at work, Dad. Like always. Yes, well. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we could meet. There's a business opportunity we'd like to discuss. I checked my watch. I'm free at 2. You can come to the bakery. The bakery? Couldn't we meet somewhere more appropriate? The Golden Vine, perhaps? Dad, it's my business hour. Take it or leave it. He arrived exactly at 2, looking distinctly uncomfortable in my cheerful, busy shop. Anthony slouched in behind him, his chef's ego distinctly deflated. Let's talk in my office, I said, leading them upstairs. Their eyes widened as we entered my spacious, professionally decorated office. The wall of industry awards and glowing reviews probably didn't match their image of a simple baker's workspace. You have all this for a bakery? Anthony couldn't help asking. I believe in investing in my business, I replied coolly. Now, what's this opportunity you wanted to discuss? My father shifted in his seat. The Golden Vine is considering bringing on new investors. We thought, given your background in hospitality. You mean my wasted education? I interrupted softly. He flinched. Isabel, about that, we may have been hasty in our judgment. May have been. I raised an eyebrow. Like you may have been hasty in dismissing Grandma Rose's bakery as beneath you, before turning it into an overpriced fusion restaurant that failed within a year. That was different, Anthony protested. We were elevating the concept. No, I cut in. You were letting your egos destroy something that worked. Just like you're doing with the Golden Vine. I pulled out the folder James had prepared, spreading photos and reports across my desk. Health code violations, staff complaints, scathing reviews, mounting debts. Your molecular gastronomy program has cost you $300,000 in equipment alone. Your food costs are at 45% because you're buying ingredients for show rather than taste. Your staff turnover is higher than any other restaurant in the city. They stared at the evidence of their failure, faces pale. How do you know all this? My father whispered. I pressed a button on my desk phone. James, could you join us? My CFO entered carrying more files. Ms. Martinez, the property transfer documents are ready. Would you like me to explain to your family who their new landlord is? Anthony's head snapped up. What property transfer? I smiled. Rose Hospitality Group now owns the building housing the Golden Vine, along with 30 other restaurant properties across the city. Rose Hospitality, that's one of the biggest restaurant groups in Boston, my father said slowly. They own the Italian place on Harbor Street, the new farm-to-table restaurant everyone's talking about, that clever little fusion spot in the Arts District. I paused. And yes, one very successful bakery. The silence was deafening. You own all that? Anthony's voice cracked. I understand business, brother dear. Real business, not just trendy cooking techniques. I know what people want, what makes a restaurant successful, and most importantly, what makes one fail. I stood up, walking to my window that overlooked the now thriving neighborhood. While you were chasing stars and recognition, I was building something sustainable. Every restaurant in my group is profitable. Everyone serves food people actually want to eat. And none of them needs gold leaf to prove their worth. What do you want? My father asked quietly. I want what I've always wanted, to honor Grandma Rose's legacy. To create restaurants that serve their communities, not just their owners' egos. I turned back to them. I'll buy the Golden Vine. At market rate, which given your debts and violations isn't much. And then what? Anthony demanded. Fire everyone. Turn it into another bakery. Actually, I'm going to restore it. Back to what it was 20 years ago before you decided fine dining meant forgetting what food is actually about. I sat back down. And you can both stay on. If you're willing to learn. Learn. Anthony scoffed. You trained in techniques, I interrupted. Now it's time to learn about hospitality. Real hospitality, not the kind that needs tweezers to plate a single bite of food. To my surprise, my father laughed. A genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. She sounds just like your grandmother, he said to Anthony. Remember how Rose always said we were too busy being fancy to be good? Anthony's anger deflated. The chocolate chip cookies, he said suddenly. The ones you had in the display case when we visited. They were her recipe, weren't they? I nodded. The same ones that built her first bakery. The ones people lined up for every morning. No molecular gastronomy required. I haven't had one of those cookies in years, he admitted. I reached into my desk and pulled out a box. Inside were chocolate chip cookies still warm from the morning's baking. Grandma Rose believed that good food brings people together, I said, offering the box. That's what I've built my restaurants on. Not trends, not critics' opinions, but real connections over real food. They each took a cookie, and for a moment, we were children again, sitting in Grandma Rose's kitchen while she taught us that the simplest things, made with love and skill, were worth more than any fancy technique. So, I said as they savored the familiar taste of childhood, shall we discuss terms? The transformation of the Golden Vine took 6 months. We stripped away the pretension, restored the warm ambience it had once been famous for, and rebuilt its reputation on quality rather than novelty. Anthony struggled at first, his ego warring with the need to change. But slowly, as customers responded to the new menu with genuine enthusiasm rather than polite appreciation, he remembered why he'd wanted to cook in the first place. My father, freed from the pressure of maintaining a failing image, discovered he actually enjoyed restaurants again. He started greeting guests personally, learning their names and preferences, creating the kind of loyalty that marketing couldn't buy. Sweet Success Bakery remains my personal favorite among all my properties. Every morning I still put on my apron and help with the early baking shift. The smell of fresh bread and cookies reminds me of Grandma Rose, of lessons learned in her kitchen about what really matters in food and life. Last week, Anthony asked if he could apprentice in the bakery 1 day a week. I want to learn the basics again, he said. The real basics, not the fancy stuff. I gave him an apron with the Sweet Success logo. It looked strange over his expensive chef's clothes, but somehow right. Start with the cookies, I told him. Grandma Rose always said if you can make a perfect chocolate chip cookie, you can make anything. He nodded, humbled but finally understanding. Sometimes the sweetest success isn't in proving others wrong, but in helping them remember what's right. Rose Hospitality Group continues to grow, but we never forget our roots. A simple bakery born from a grandmother's legacy and built on the belief that good food served with love is the finest cuisine of all. The day my father threw me out, it was raining. Not a gentle spring shower, but the kind of thunderstorm that matched his mood perfectly as he tossed my laptop bag onto our manicured front lawn. No daughter of mine will work in tech support, he roared, my resignation letter from his law firm clutched in his fist. We are a family of lawyers, not computer geeks. I watched my MacBook sink into the mud, thinking about the code I'd been writing during my lunch breaks at the firm. The algorithm that would eventually become the foundation of my cybersecurity empire was safely backed up in the cloud. But still, that was a perfectly good laptop. Dad, please, I tried one last time. The help desk position at Oracle is just a starting point. I have plans. Plans. He laughed bitterly. Alexandra Chin, you had plans. Partner track at the firm. Marriage to Judge Wilson's son. A proper life. Not this ridiculous tech fantasy. My mother stood in the doorway wringing her hands. Honey, please reconsider. The Wilson family is having us over for dinner on Sunday. Michael still likes you even after you canceled the engagement. I canceled because I don't want to be a lawyer's wife, Mom. I want to build something of my own. Build something. Dad's face was purple now. You're throwing away a law degree from Harvard to answer phones and ask people if they've tried turning their computers off and on again. If he'd bothered to actually read my business plan, he'd have known that the help desk job was just to get inside Oracle, to understand their security infrastructure from the ground up. My real plan involved revolutionizing how companies protected their data. But explaining that would have been pointless. He'd stopped listening the moment I mentioned leaving the law firm. "Get out," he said quietly, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "If you want to throw away everything we've built for you, fine. But don't expect any support from this family while you play at being a tech worker." "Richard," my mother protested weakly, "she's our daughter." "Not anymore." He turned his back, walking into the house. No daughter of mine would choose answering phones over a partnership track position. I picked up my muddy laptop along with the duffel bag of clothes he'd thrown out after it. 3 years of secret coding, of building my security protocol while pretending to care about tort law, had led to this moment. "Mom." I looked at her, still hovering in the doorway. "Are you going to say anything?" She glanced over her shoulder, where Dad was probably pouring himself a scotch in his wood-paneled study. Maybe in a few months when you realize this was a mistake." The door closed softly, but it might as well have been slammed. I took one last look at the colonial mansion I'd grown up in, with its perfectly symmetric windows and Chin and Associates Law parking permit displayed proudly on my father's Mercedes. Then I got into my beat-up Honda Civic and drove away from the life they'd planned for me. My studio apartment wasn't much, a converted garage in a questionable neighborhood, but it had fast internet and enough space for my computers. The help desk job at Oracle paid barely above minimum wage, but that didn't matter. I wasn't there for the money. Every day I answered calls about forgotten passwords and malfunctioning printers. But while I walked people through basic troubleshooting, I was learning. Understanding how Oracle's security systems worked, and more importantly how they failed. At night I coded. The algorithm I'd started building during mind-numbing contract review sessions at my father's firm was growing into something revolutionary. A security protocol that could adapt and evolve, identifying threats before they became breaches. My ex-fiancé Michael Wilson called once, about 2 months after I left. "Alex baby, come on. This rebellion has gone on long enough. Daddy says your father will take you back at the firm. We can still have the wedding we planned." I hung up and blocked his number. 6 months into my career disgrace, as my father called it, I had my first breakthrough. During a routine security scan at Oracle, my program caught something the standard protocols missed. A sophisticated attempt to breach customer data that would have cost the company millions. I submitted my findings through proper channels, careful to hide how I'd actually caught the breach. 2 days later, I was called into a meeting with the head of cybersecurity. "Miss Chen," he studied me over his glasses, "can you explain how you detected this breach attempt? Our best systems missed it." I took a deep breath. This was my moment. "Actually, sir, I've been developing a new security protocol. Would you like to see how it works?" 3 hours later, I walked out of his office with my first development contract. It wasn't huge, just enough to quit the help desk and focus on refining my algorithm, but it was a start. I sent my parents an email that night, excited to share my first real success. The response came from my mother's account, but I could hear my father's words. "Tech support to junior programmer. Hardly the achievement we expected from a Harvard Law graduate. The Wilsons asked about you at dinner. Michael is still single." I closed the email without finishing it and got back to work. The next year passed in a blur of code and coffee. My protocol grew more sophisticated, catching threats that other security systems couldn't even detect. Oracle's initial contract led to others. Google noticed. Then Apple. Then the Department of Defense. I moved out of the garage apartment into a small condo. Then a larger one. Then a loft in the city's tech district. I hired my first employee, then my fifth, then my 50th. Chin Security Solutions was born, though I kept my name off all the public documentation. Let everyone think the revolutionary new security company was run by some shadowy tech genius. I had my reasons for staying anonymous. My mother's emails came less frequently, usually with attached articles about successful female lawyers or news about Michael Wilson's rising career. I archived them all unread. Then came the government contracts, the venture capital offers, the acquisitions. I turned down every buyout, keeping control of my company even as its value soared past the billion-dollar mark. The press started asking questions about the mysterious founder of CSS. I hired a CEO to be the public face, a smooth-talking businessman who loved attention. I stayed in my coding cave, building better and better security systems. Alexandra. My assistant Sarah poked her head into my office one afternoon. Forbes is trying to reach you again. They're doing their 30 under 30 list. Tell them to talk to David, I said, referring to my public-facing seat. I'm busy. They specifically want you. They've figured out you're the real founder. I looked up from my screens. How? Someone talked. Probably that intern from Oracle who was there when you caught the first breach. They're running the story with or without your cooperation. I leaned back in my chair thinking about my father's face the day he threw me out. About all the condescending emails and disappointed sighs. Tell them I'll do the interview. But I have one condition. 2 weeks later, I sat in my penthouse office, looking at the advance copy of Forbes that Sarah had just handed me. There I was on the cover. Alexandra Chin, 28-year-old founder of Chin Security Solutions, the youngest self-made female tech billionaire in history. My phone buzzed. Mom's number. I let it ring. The Forbes article hit newsstands on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, my father's law firm had lost 3 major corporate clients to firms with better cybersecurity. By Thursday, they'd lost 5 more. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. Mom had called 37 times. Dad 18. Even Michael Wilson had tried reaching me through LinkedIn, probably after his father's law firm also lost clients over security concerns. Your parents are in the lobby, Sarah announced Friday morning. Your father tried to intimidate the security team with legal threats. Your mother's crying. I looked out my penthouse window at the city skyline, at the 3 buildings now bearing my company's logo. Are they really? Yes. And? Sarah hesitated. Mr. Wilson is with them. Both senior and junior. Of course. They weren't here as family. They were here as lawyers who'd just lost millions in billable hours because their cybersecurity was outdated. Send them up, I said, straightening my designer blazer. But first, activate Protocol Rose. Protocol Rose was my personal favorite among our security measures, named after my grandmother who'd secretly funded my first computer. As my family rode the elevator up 30 floors, every screen in my office came alive, displaying real-time data about security breaches our system had prevented at law firms across the country. The elevator doors opened. My father stormed in first, brandishing the Forbes magazine like a weapon. My mother followed, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. The Wilsons brought up the rear, both looking decidedly uncomfortable. How dare you? Dad thundered. How dare you embarrass this family like this? I raised an eyebrow. Embarrass? By building a billion-dollar company? By revolutionizing cybersecurity? Please elaborate on the embarrassment. You lied to us. Mom burst out. All those years pretending to be just a tech support worker. I never lied. You just never asked. Too busy sending me articles about female lawyers and Michael's career achievements to actually take an interest in what I was building. Michael stepped forward, attempting his old charming smile. Alex, baby, let's be reasonable. Maybe we can work something out. A merger of interests. That's why you're really here, isn't it? I gestured to the screens surrounding us. Your firms are losing clients because your security is outdated. You want preferential treatment. Now see here, Judge Wilson started, but I cut him off. Chin Security Solutions has a very clear policy about client acquisition. All firms must undergo our standard security audit. No exceptions. I smiled coldly. Even for family. We are not just any potential clients, my father snapped. We are your family. You owe us. I owe you. I stood up slowly. Let's talk about what I owe you, Dad. Should we start with the day you threw me out? Or maybe when you told the entire country club I was having a mental breakdown? Or perhaps when you tried to have me declared incompetent to prevent me from accessing my trust fund? He flushed. That was for your own good. You were throwing away a real career for this. I pressed a button on my desk. The screens shifted to display our company's current stock price and market valuation. This? You mean my company that's worth more than every law firm in this city combined? The security system that protects 80% of Fortune 500 companies? The technology that just won a $2 billion government contract? My mother sank into a chair, still clutching her handkerchief. But why didn't you tell us? We're your parents. Really? Because I distinctly remember Dad saying I wasn't his daughter anymore. That no daughter of his would work in tech support. That was 3 years ago, she pleaded. We were worried about you. No, you were worried about appearances. About what the country club would think. About the cancelled engagement to the judge's son. Not about me. Michael tried again. Alex, we can put all that behind us. Maybe over dinner. I pressed another button. A contract appeared on the main screen. This is our standard security audit agreement. If your firms want to work with us, you'll need to sign it. Our fee is $50,000 per audit. Non-negotiable. $50,000? Judge Wilson sputtered. That's outrageous. Actually, it's a bargain. Ask the clients you've been losing. I sat back down. Sarah will email you the paperwork. Standard processing time is 6 to 8 weeks. Weeks. My father's face was purple again. We're losing clients now. Should have thought about that before dismissing cybersecurity as beneath your dignity. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting. Alexandra graced chin. My mother stood up, trying her stern voice. We are not finished here. Actually, we are. I nodded to the security team waiting by the elevator. These gentlemen will show you out. When, Dad? That parking spot at your firm with the Chin and Associates permit? You might want to update it. The name's worth a lot more in tech than it ever was in law. After they were gone, Sarah brought me a coffee. Your mother left this. She handed me an old photo. She pulled it out but didn't have the courage to give it to you. It was a picture of me at 12, sitting at my first computer. A gift from Grandma Rose. Dad had hated it, said computers would rot my brain. But Grandma had seen something else. Keep going, Alexandra, she'd whispered, slipping me books on coding. Some people build empires with laws. You'll build yours with bytes. I propped the photo on my desk next to the Forbes magazine. From one, my 12-year-old self grinned with coding dreams. From the other, my current self stared back with billion-dollar reality. The next few weeks brought more attempts at reconciliation. Mom sent daily emails, moving from guilt to bargaining to outright bribery. Dad's law firm formally applied for our security audit, paying the full fee. The Wilsons sent an expensive peace offering, a sports car I donated to charity. I focused on work instead of family drama. We launched a new security protocol, expanded into artificial intelligence, acquired 2 promising startups. My net worth doubled, then tripled. Then came the day I'd been secretly dreading, Grandma Rose's birthday. The first since she'd passed away. I visited her grave, placing roses and a copy of the Forbes article. You were right, Grandma, I whispered. I built something bigger than they could imagine. She'd be so proud. I turned to find my mother standing there, looking older and more uncertain than I'd ever seen her. The roses were her idea, Mom said softly. That first computer. I was against it, but she insisted. Said you had a spark she recognized. Why are you here, Mom? Because I was wrong. We were all wrong. She pulled out another old photo, me and Grandma Rose working on that first computer together. She left this for you in her will, along with a letter I was supposed to give you when you succeeded. I kept it, thinking you never would. Not in computers. The letter was in Grandma's familiar handwriting. My dearest Alexandra, if you're reading this, you've proven them all wrong. I knew you would. Some people look at computers and see machines. You looked at them and saw possibilities. Your father builds his empire on precedent and procedure. You'll build yours on innovation and imagination. Different tools, same determination. I'm leaving you my entire estate. Not much compared to what you'll build, but enough to help you start. Your parents don't know. They never understood that true success isn't about following traditions but creating new ones. Prove them wrong, my brilliant girl. Then prove them right about one thing, that you're still their daughter even if you chose a different path. Love, Grandma Rose. I looked at my mother, seeing for the first time the regret behind her perfectly maintained facade. I have a board meeting in an hour, I said, tucking the letter away. But maybe we could have coffee next week? Just us. Her eyes filled with tears. I'd like that. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But maybe it was a start. That evening I added 2 new items to my office wall. Grandma's letter and that old photo of us at my first computer. Between them I hung a framed piece of code. The first version of the security protocol that had started everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Your father's firm passed the security audit. Should I process their client agreement? I looked at the photo of 12-year-old me, dreaming of building something extraordinary. At the Forbes cover showing what those dreams had become. At Grandma's letter believing in me before anyone else did. Add a clause, I texted back. They have to update that parking permit first. Chin Security Solutions has a nice ring to it. Sometimes success isn't just about proving them wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about finding a way back home. Even if you have to build a billion-dollar road to get there.